ahead, Karen.
Thank you. Morning, Council. Morning, staff. As a result of the order of Council issued by the Province of Ontario declaring an emergency for the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as the requirements for physical distancing, the meeting is being held electronically in accordance with Section 238 of the Municipal Act. The procedures for the meeting are as per the town's procedural bylaw and the electronic meeting protocol during emergencies. I will now ask the clerk to conduct a roll call of council present.
Good morning. I will call the roll of council. Deputy Mayor Nancy Alcock.
Present.
Councillor Dan Armour.
Present.
Councillor Jason Fitzgerald.
Present.
Councillor Dion Schumacher.
Present.
Councillor Bob Stone.
Present.
Councillor Brian Thompson.
Present.
Councillor Jonathan Weed.
Present.
Councillor Tim Whitby. I don't believe he's on with us yet. Mayor Karen Terziano.
Present.
You have quorum.
Thank you. I have a resolution moved by, just before I start, we have assigned movers and seconders to each motion. If you, for any reason, do not wish to be a mover or seconder, just let me know before we complete the motion. Moved by Councillor Armour, seconded by Councillor Fitzgerald, be it resolved that the regular council meeting agenda dated Wednesday, May 25th, 2020 be adopted as printed and circulated. All in favor? And that's carried. See Councillor Withey's coming on right now, so that's good. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. Just before we get into our first invited presentation, I just want to acknowledge the passing of former Mayor Bob Addison this week. Council is aware that the flags had been lowered to half-mast for 3 days. Bob Addison served as mayor in Huntsville in 1970. He was unanimously appointed by council upon the formation of district government. Bob was also serving as a town councillor elected in 1968. During his time on council, he also served on several committees, including chair of welfare, police, fire, and finance. Some of those committees we don't have today. Bob was not just a councillor, but he was a business owner and a very respected member of our community. For those who knew Bob, they know he was a true gentleman. And I want to, on behalf of council and staff, express our sincere condolences to Clara and the family. And Bob, you will be missed by this community. One other thing that I want to make note of just before we start, this is Paramedic Week, and what a time to recognize paramedics through this COVID-19. But we thank all paramedics, including our own Councillor Armour, for everything they do year-round, every year, as paramedics in our community.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Sorry?
I just said thank you, Your Worship.
Okay. We have an invited presentation from Carl Papel for our financial statement. So Carl, if you want to zoom in here, I will turn the floor over to you.
Oh, okay. Good morning, Your Worship and councillors. Thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to present your consolidated financial statements this morning. We are the independent auditors for the town of Huntsville. We were fortunate enough to get into council to the municipal offices prior to the COVID-19 period. So we were able to conduct our audit in normal due course. Our responsibility is to conduct our audit in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards as promulgated by our professional body, the Canadian Institute of Professional and Chartered Accountants. I'm not sure if you have the package in front of you. Our auditor's report is on page 1 of the financial statements, and it's titled Independent Auditor's Report. Okay, Yes. So this is the result of our audit. 15 years ago, we were able to say all of this in 3 paragraphs, but going with the times and full disclosure and transparency, it now takes us a page and a half to state that this is a clean auditor's report. Just a couple of highlights. These financial statements, which we conducted our audit on, are consolidated financial statements. So they include not only the results of the town of Huntsville, but also, excuse me, also the results for the Huntsville Public Library and for the BIA. So that's why this is called a consolidated financial statement. As you can see in our opinion, in the middle paragraphs, the basis of our opinion is based upon, as I said, conducting our audit procedures in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards. Those procedures include attending to municipal offices, looking at books and records, both electronic and paper-based books and records. We do not review every transaction that goes on during the course of the year. Our audits are done on a sample basis. We evaluate your systems of controls and procedures, and then test those financial controls procedures that they're operating in the manner that they're supposed to operate. We did not, during the course of our audit, we did not have any issues in respect of how those controls and procedures were operating. And then we do an analytical based review of results and compare variances from actual to budget, and then investigate where we felt we needed additional information to satisfy ourselves, again, that the financial statements are appropriate in accordance with public sector standards, which is how you report, as opposed to private companies that report in accordance with general accounting standards. So again, our auditor's report is a clean report. It will be dated. You'll see it's not dated yet. It will be dated as of today when the resolution is passed to accept the financial statements. Yeah, so just a little bit about the audit process. Some think the audit process is sort of a 3 or 4 day event when we come in at the end of the year to take a look at the books and records. But in fact, the process really goes through the balance of the year. We're involved. We communicate with your staff, with Julia, with Riva. There's questions that come up during the course of the year, and we actually come in 2 times, rather not just at the end of the year, but also generally late fall, early winter. And that's when we're actually doing those tests of controls and procedures. So sort of the audit is a 2-step process. Let's say our team, it's the same team that's been on your audit for a number of years, so they're familiar with your systems and processes. And it was we certainly appreciated the excuse me appreciated the support of Julia and the work that her team did. Also wanted to acknowledge Riva being a new member to the town team, that she spent quite a bit of time with my staff in terms of helping us get our audit done efficiently, and that was a welcome addition from our perspective to your team. And so on balance, that's really our comments in terms of our audit process and our report, which is, which is those 2 pages. I understand from Riva that there will be a more detailed presentation of the actual numbers in the financial statements later on in this meeting, but that's my comments on our audit procedures, and those are the results of our audit. If you have any questions, I certainly would welcome those questions, and we'll try to answer.
Thank you very much, Carl. Are there any questions at this time from council? Seeing none. Okay, we do have resolutions later on in the agenda, and there will be time for other questions at that time too. But I'm guessing, Carl, you're not going to hang around until then.
I wasn't asked to. That's right, exactly.
No. Okay, so thank you very much for that, and have a wonderful day and stay safe.
Great, thank you very much. Now, thank you.
Okay. So our first report from municipal officers is on the Main Street Streetscape project, and Director has some updates to provide council with, and I think probably some drawings to share, so we may go to a shared screen any minute. Director Hernan?
Thank you, Mayor Terziano. Yes, I'm just going to share a screen here. Oh. I'm hoping everybody can see what I'm looking at. Kent Park. Is that what you're looking at, Mayor Terziano?
That is, yeah.
Okay. So these are the updated drawings from the last meeting we had when we talked about some of the options. And we just wanted to bring this drawing back, and one other quick one just to make sure everybody is happy with what's been designed. So this was the Kent Park concept with the greenery around the outside, the 3 different access points into the center area. And it was asked that a raised stage area would be designed into it somewhere. So in the back corner, it has been designed in that there'd be a large flat area back here. And there would be a street light on either side to solve the whole issue of this dark area. So that's the direction we were given, and we just want to make sure that council is good with that, and that's the way we'll proceed on that area for the planning of it. There is a kiosk still slated, not drawn to scale, so the kiosk could be a little larger in area. Kiosk could be moved in front of the stage. It could be put up on top of the stage. It could be anywhere you like. There is access on both sides to the stage. These are designed to be a ramp, not a set of stairs, so they'll be fully accessible for whatever goes on in this area, if anything at all. So that's the Kent Park drawing. The other drawing I'd quickly like to share with you is the crosswalk drawing for Main Street with the bump outs. We have drawn in the one crosswalk as council's direction. With the safety requirement lanes that we need where the signage will be for the crosswalk to make sure everything will work. There was some discussion down here across from Kent Street about moving this bump out back further. Because of sight lines, because of the crosswalk coming into a non-intersection, the other way you're coming from an intersection, they don't want to move this any further. Plus we have the King Street area coming up. But the bump out on the south side by Town Hall has been moved further down. So it does create more of a parking area through here. Bus loading zone area, things like that. So that was the other thing that we were asked to look at and do. This bump out here that we talked about did not get moved up further the street. I know there was some talk about bringing it up further by King Street, and that's as far as we could bring it. The engineers feel comfortable with it. So those are the 2 changes based on the direction we received from council at the last meeting. And if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. If not, we'll proceed with getting the drawings done that way.
Okay. Council, any questions? Councillor Alcock.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Your Worship. And thanks for that, Steve. Just a quick question, I guess. I have been approached or had a discussion with the owner of Mazuma right beside Kent Park, you know, the building that faces onto Kent Park. And he wasn't around for the original discussion. So I gave him the lowdown and said that the plans I thought were really good. But I was just hoping that, do you think an opportunity could be made for you to sit down with him just to go over the plans so that if he wants to do something to his building, that there's some sort of symmetry or something like that, that it's possible. It would be good given the proximity of his building right beside Mazuma. I think, you know, potentially it could even beautify that situation a bit more. So I guess it's a question if you wouldn't mind following up with him. Or maybe he's reached out to you already, I don't know.
Yeah, through you, Mayor Terziano. Yes, he did reach out to me after he spoke with you. We've had a couple conversations. I told him the stage we're at, and once we have some approval from council on drawings, we'll be sharing everything with him. And he wants to do some work in that back area of his building too, and we've communicated, so we're in touch.
Perfect, thank you very much.
Councillor Schumacher?
Through you, Your Worship. Director Hernan, there will be like access at Kent Park to like electrical outlets. Are they going to be, I know we talked about those street lamps having electrical outlet capabilities. Will that still stay the same for there as well?
Through you, Mayor Terziano, yes, that is correct. That will still stay. There'll be a power supply somewhere in that park like there is now for running the kiosk building or anything else which is ever done there, whether it's Christmas lights or whatever.
And one other, I do like the concept of keeping the bump out in front of King Street now. I mean, we've seen, or maybe a few of you have seen more and more talk of with COVID and people spreading out and having more space to be able to walk. I do like our concept of having a little more space for people to walk on a sidewalk moving forward.
Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, thank you very much, Your Worship. I hadn't visualized the raised area being in the corner as it's been designed there, but I really like that idea. I think that that makes great sense and is an improvement, because I was sort of visualizing it being along the whole, I guess, or a part of the north side of the Mazuma building type of thing. But I like this concept much better. And given the ramps idea too, Director Hernan, you know, adds to it as well. So I think that's a great change. I'm still not in favor, of course, of the bump out from the town hall down, but I'm going to be voting in favor of it in any regard. But anyway, I like it. I like it a lot. Thanks.
Councillor Withey.
Thank you. Can you hear me? I've had some technical difficulties this morning. I don't know what's going on, so I'm actually doing this through my phone. I guess I just want to register that I don't like this Kent Park design. And I mentioned it last meeting. I think that the parking, we're going to lose some parking there. I'm also a little concerned that we have yet another stage in town. I mean, we've got issues. You know, we talk about the Huntsville Theater and, you know, revenues, and, you know, we talked about Canvas. They're opening up something that things can happen on. We've now got a band shell in Riverwood Park, and now we have yet another stage. Yeah, I mean, are we doing ourselves any favors with our other facilities by putting another facility in there that I don't know that we need it. And I think we're going to miss that parking in there. So anyways, those are my points. I don't know that we need another stage in town. And I think we're going to miss that parking. So I will not be supporting this. Thank you.
Director Hernan, I mean, I'm okay with the parking being removed, but I think Councillor Withey makes a good point with another stage in town. But I didn't think of it as an actual stage, not a performance stage, just a raised platform. Could you clarify that a bit more?
It will be a raised platform, probably up about 1.5 feet, 2 feet type thing. And that was the direction that we received at the last council meeting, is that you wanted some sort of raised platform back there. And that's why we've added it back into the drawing. It was at council's direction. Whatever you put up there, there'll be no lights or anything. It won't be a performance stage that I think somebody could book out. But I think, you know, if you wanted to put a Christmas tree up there at Christmas time, if you wanted to put the tourist information booth up there, you could do that. That was the direction that we were given, was just to create this raised area. So maybe the stage is the wrong word, but it's a raised platform, and it'll be easily accessible by a ramp on either side.
Is there any size? Has there been a size determined of this raised platform?
Just by looking at the drawings, it looks, and I'd have to get the full scaling out, about 20 feet wide. I mean, we could put a couple of Muskoka chairs up there in the summertime. We could put a picnic table up there.
Any other questions? Councillor Armour.
Thank you, Worship. Through you to Director Hernan, the kiosk location, is there a reason why we're putting it in that area there so close to the building, or is that just what the designer came up with?
It's because the kiosk is there now, and there was talk about a kiosk. It was just plugged there. Okay. It's designed to be a mobile. You could put it in the center, like I say. You could put it on the stage. You could put it wherever you want inside the square.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Any other questions on this piece? Okay. So we have a resolution for these changes then. Going to read it. Moved by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Stone. Be it resolved that staff be directed to proceed with the final drawings for the Main Street Streetscape project as presented to council at the regular meeting held on May 27th, 2020. Questions? All in favor of the updated drawings presented today? Opposed? And that carries. Thank you for that, Director Hernan. Just one other thing while we're on Streetscape, I just wanted to mention to council, we were approached by the church next door to Town Hall to incorporate some of their green space into the Streetscape project. And I just want council to be aware that we're talking with the church about what we could do there so that everything gets tied in. We haven't made any final decisions and they have to obviously be comfortable with it, but I just want council to know that we were in those discussions with them. So another little something might be coming. Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Worship. If that is in fact the case and we do reach an agreement with the church, I know that we felt we didn't have room to make an accessible pathway down there because we didn't have enough land. So if in fact an arrangement is made, that I would like us to consider that as an option. Thank you.
Yeah, and that actually is part of our ongoing discussions. So that's great. Okay. Good. All right. I have a resolution moved by Councillor Schumacher, seconded by Councillor Armour. Be it resolved that the following council meeting minutes be hereby adopted as printed and circulated. Special council, April 29th, 2020 at 8:30 a.m. and regular council, April 29th, 2020 at 9 a.m. Any questions on the council meetings? Seeing none, all in favor? And that carries. Okay, the next item on our agenda are all related to COVID-19 updates. And the first is Canada Day. And we've not officially discussed Canada Day or the cancellation of the daytime gathering at Heritage Place or the gathering for fireworks. Most municipalities across Ontario have canceled all gatherings until July 2nd, which I think is to take in Canada Day. We do have a resolution prepared to officially cancel Canada Day for 2020 if council should wish to do that. We need 2/3 of council to agree to doing that. I guess the first thing before we even get into reading a resolution, does anybody want to weigh in on whether we should or shouldn't be doing that at this point in time? Okay, then I will ask for a mover and seconder for a motion for Canada Day. I will ask for Councillor Thompson. Thank you. And Councillor Armour. Thank you. So, whereas to help stop the spread of COVID-19 on March 28, 2020, the province of Ontario issued an emergency order to prohibit organized public events and social gatherings of more than 5 people. And whereas it is not anticipated the approval for large gatherings will be permitted before July 1st, therefore be it resolved that all Town of Huntsville Canada Day celebrations be canceled for 2020. Questions? All in favor? And that carries. The next COVID-related 19 update is on the provincial updates. And as council is aware, the province has begun to slowly reopen spaces. And in the Premier's message, he was very strong in indicating, while the province will allow certain things to reopen, it's entirely up to the municipality to determine the actual implementation. So we have a plan to carefully evaluate each reopening. for safety of our citizens. And we will do that at each stage when the province allows us to reopen. But provincially this past week, and we agreed to it, open now our tennis courts, pickleball, basketball, volleyball courts in Huntsville and Port Sydney, skateboard parks at Macaulay Robertson, frisbee golf at Macaulay Robertson, the off-leash dog park at Macaulay Robertson. Benches, picnic tables, chairs will not be reinstalled in the outdoor spaces at this time. Municipal beaches are open. The walking track at Conroy Park is open, and residents are reminded that sport play on the field is still limited to, a couple of people kicking a ball around, still no gatherings of more than 5 people. So I think council's all aware of that, and we did put out a press release, but just wanted to update that. And also today, the province extended the emergency order to June 9th now, in order to keep all the things in place that they want in place. Any questions on provincial updates? Okay. Oh, Councillor Withey?
Thank you, Worship. I was just wondering, there's been in the news, and I don't know if you've heard anything, or maybe even Councillor Armour knows, there seems to be some confusion about testing sites, and there was I saw something out there where the Premier said that now people can go and get tested without appointments, etc. And then I saw something subsequent that no, that isn't actually the case. I was just wondering if there was if you had any clarity or insight on that. Thanks.
I haven't personally heard anything other than what they've been announcing on the news. I'll ask the CAO if you're privy to anything, even through Dr. Gardner, about accelerated testing in our area.
Thank you, Worship. So we haven't had anything formal from Dr. Gardner. I have been in discussions with the CAO for the District of Muskoka, and they are talking about potentially putting provisions in place for testing of staff. But we haven't heard of any extended testing sites, either from Dr. Gardner or from the hospital. We haven't heard anything as of yet, so nothing new to report.
Councillor Armour?
Thank you, Worship. Just to, you still have to go through the same process as before. You have to go through the your telehealth program, call in. They will assign you to an assessment center for testing. And we do now have community paramedics going out into the community and actually doing testing in nursing homes and retirement homes, etc. So it's coming, but it's not open to everybody yet.
Thanks for that. Okay, the next item is municipal updates as far as COVID-19 goes. And all of council received a letter from, a joint letter from the Chamber of Commerce and the BIA this week. And when we got that letter, they outlined some really great ideas, some good requests. And so what I did in order to have this on today's agenda and have some discussion about it is got staff to sort of get active for the last 3 days to see what issues in this letter we can address. So I just want to highlight a few things that we've done before we open this up to discussion. A large portion of the letter or the request was for us to advocate support in areas outside our jurisdiction, federally and provincially, which of course we will do always, advocate for our residents. The federal and provincial governments have programs available to businesses, and they change daily. They're updated daily. There may still be businesses that can't access some of these programs, but they are still out there and they are still changing every day. So each business should not walk away just thinking they're not qualifying there. The District of Muskoka last week also made a loan of $750,000 to Muskoka Futures to put with their $1 million plus that they're getting from FedNor in order to loan money to small businesses that aren't being, where their needs aren't being met federally or provincially. Muskoka Futures evaluating and making loans to businesses is what they do. And so if there's any organization that can do that quickly, it is Muskoka Futures, and they have a pot of money for any business in Huntsville to apply for, and a fairly easy application process. That's my understanding. So these levels of government should be the first line that is explored by businesses. Local government, well, local government cannot as easily provide loans or grants to businesses. Basically, in effect, we can't. At this time, we can't. It's against the Municipal Act. So federal, provincial, and Muskoka Futures is the way to go right now. What some of the things that the town can do though right now, and we are actively working on it, is we are in the process of setting up lining and directional arrows on Main Street to hopefully have people going one way and showing the 6-meter distancing. And that was a request I know of the BIA. We're also ordering some street sanitizers that can be placed on the sidewalk outside of businesses to help all of our residents sanitize when they're downtown. We were trying to access some floor markers, social distancing markers, extra hand sanitizer, window stickers, posters, things like that to make available to businesses. However, once again, we're not actually allowed to do it as it's bonusing. So we're going to continue to work to see if there's a way to do that. But right now we can't actually put that in place, although we've got our access points and prices. So we'll continue to work on that. The request for the parking ambassador, we will advertise and hire that position to be on Main Street as soon as possible. The request to have somebody back watering the flowers and helping out with the weeding and everything on Main Street. We do have a resolution later on in the meeting. If council wishes, we can put that back into our budget. We have a price for that. We've also had requests from individual businesses for food trucks, for outdoor patios, picnic areas. We've had requests to have yoga classes in some of our parks. And we have worked with each of these requests and been pretty successful in being able to accommodate every request that's come in. So staff has done a great job there working with people. We also have a resolution later on for council's consideration to waive some building fees up to a certain amount to help our businesses with outdoor patios, temporary structures and things like that. So we'll revisit that. The chamber has also asked for an additional $30,000 in marketing as a collaborative approach with the Municipal Accommodation Tax Board, the Lake of Bays, and the BIA. And we have a resolution prepared if council wishes to make that commitment to marketing. There was an ask about some subsidization of memberships, and at this point, we don't have any resolution on that. We may ask our staff that are putting together a full recovery plan to look at that piece of it. Tax deferrals are in place. We can continue to look at extensions. We cannot, however, waive them. It's against the Municipal Act. It's fine if they change the rules down the road, but right now we can't do that. So that's a lot of updates and a lot of things to digest. And as I say, everything is changing rapidly. But that was just to sort of go over the gist of the asks in that joint letter and what we've been able to do so far. So I'll open it up to council for any comments or questions based on that ask. Councillor Alcock.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thanks for that update. Certainly, it was a long letter that we received. And I guess on the issue of what the municipality can and can't do, I just want to be sure that fundamentally, from a principle perspective, we really believe it's important to help our businesses be safe, right? And have access to anything they need. So from a principal perspective, our council supports that principle. And what I heard from you is, yes, we do, but we just need to figure out how to implement that so that they are able to access PPE and all of the things. So that was my first thing, just to clarify that from, at least from my perspective, I support that. And I think I've heard that around our table, that that's like a number one priority. How do we help our businesses have that, get to that point where they can tell their customers, we are safe. We are doing everything possible to be safe. And so is our community. So I guess that's a question to you because of the way you said it. I just want to confirm we are working at a way to implement that. It's not as straightforward, but we are looking at implementing that.
Yeah, up till about 24 hours ago, I thought we were going to actually be able to do it, and but not the way that we thought we could do it. So yes, we're still working towards figuring out how we can do it. But we do have our access points and pricing and everything to get the materials. So.
Okay, that's brilliant. Thank you. I have another question, but I can wait.
Okay, Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Your Worship. Since all of this relates to, I would think, tourism, could this not come from MAT funds and not be considered bonusing in that respect?
That might be a good question for our treasurer, and we'll give you a few minutes to ponder that question, and I'll come back to it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Weed.
Thank you, Mayor Trezano. I guess Councillor Alcock kind of touched on what I was going to mention, and that was the priority of making sure PPE gets to the businesses. The fundamentals are, in order for business to be viable, not just in the immediate, but long term, I think over the next, into the future, years from now, they're going to have to be set up in a way that demonstrates the top level of safety. So it's kind of like setting our businesses up for long-term success. It's going to be absolutely crucial. So I think that priority should be on safety equipment. And like she said, anything we can do to help in that respect, that's going to set up our community for more success in the future. And I think just to touch a bit on the marketing perspective too, the key to that marketing campaign is going to be to show that, yes, our businesses are safe, our main street, this downtown is safe, all the businesses are taking all the precautions, because if people visiting, whether they're cottagers or full-time residents, anybody who's visiting a business, if they know that as a community we are taking all the steps necessary, I think that'll show really a really strong commitment to it, and will give people confidence to support those businesses and shop. So just wanted to reiterate that. Thanks.
Councillor Withey.
Thanks, Your Worship. A couple of quick things. I do agree with the letter as far as a lot of the requests that go on. I do think we still, as I mentioned in my paper last meeting, I still think it's important to try and find a way to support our local businesses monetarily, whether it's some sort of system of grant, and to see if, as I've said with my conversation with Norm Miller, he said, bring anything to us and we'll find a way. So I know you've had other discussions, but one thing I did actually point out to Kelly Haywood with the letter that I felt I had to point out is in the letter, they take a shot at the insurance industry as somehow taking advantage of the pandemic to make profits on the backs of what's going on out there. And that I don't believe that's the case. Sticking up for my industry, I don't think that that's happening. I think a lot of the markets are actually returning premiums to policyholders for auto insurance because of the less less traffic on our roads, et cetera. So I do take issue with that shot at my industry. I don't think that's accurate at all. But anyway, I'll just leave it at that. Thanks.
Julia, did you have a chance to think about an answer to whether or not we could use MAP funds?
So I guess there's two sides to that. So with the municipal funds that we hold the 30%, I think that we'd still be bound to the Municipal Act for that provision 106 for the bonusing. But if we can directly relate it to putting heads in beds and tourism according to our policies and bylaws, then we might be able to do that. But it would probably be better to come from the MAP board, because they were purposely set aside as a separate entity so that they wouldn't be under the Municipal Act.
Okay, Councillor Fitzgerald.
I'm not sure of the process or how we would do this, but perhaps we could adopt a change in that percentage breakdown for a certain time period. It's done by bylaw, so we could review our percentage of the MAT tax and perhaps reduce it, and to encourage the funding of the needed PPE, etc. Just a suggestion.
Okay.
Sorry, Your Worship. I think that it would be prudent for us to make the first move here and let everyone know that we are committed to this. So I think it's the right thing to do if we can do that.
Okay.
Thank you.
And that'll be another question that Julia can maybe ponder for a few minutes about whether or not we can actually change that bylaw. Just so council's aware, I think that we are going to have a special COVID-19 council meeting within a couple of weeks. So some of these things that we're getting answers on or putting off, we're just doing it for a couple of weeks so that we can get everything together. We're not going to wait a month for decisions on this. This is stuff that if we can't have a decision today, as I said, we do have some resolutions to table today, but so Julia, maybe that's something you can look at. It doesn't have to be an answer today, probably on that piece either. Councillor Stone?
I just wanted to reiterate that we need to get the PPE and some signage to the businesses to keep the businesses safe, to keep the citizens safe, and keep our visitors safe. You know, if the rules prevent us from doing that, then damn the rules. You know, putting together a kit that all businesses can access makes perfect sense, and I'd happy to take the flak over that.
Julia.
I just wanted to make sure that everyone is aware too that the provincial government has done a really good job of coming up with a list of all the vendors that do have the PPE, and they have done it by they've outlined every single not every single industry, but a lot of industries, and exactly what kind of things that they should be looking for as well. They have a very extensive list on what PPE is available and what suppliers are putting it out there, and it's all publicly available on their website, and we've been making sure that information gets distributed to the businesses as well.
Councillor Armour?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to echo that, I have a website that I could forward off to Julie or to yourself that you could share with the BIA that gives a list of every distributor in the province of Ontario that has PPE and what they supply.
And we have distributed the best practice package to the Chamber and BIA as well, so that all of that information is available to them to provide to their businesses as well. So, Councillor Thompson?
Thank you, Your Worship. Further to Councillor Fitzgerald's thoughts with regards to reducing our percentage of MAT, I think it has merit for a couple of reasons. Number one, I think it's a good idea, but secondly, there are programs that we had planned to be promoting, different events in town that we had planned to be promoting with that 30% that we won't be doing this year. So I would be in favor of entertaining that idea, as long as there was a sunset clause in there for a certain amount of, a certain period of time type of thing. But yeah, I think it has some merit, and I would definitely be in favor of considering that, Your Worship.
Okay. Other questions, comments? Councillor Armour.
Thank you. The resolution we passed last month for the COVID-19 $500,000 fund, is that not accessible, or can that not be used for some of the stuff we're talking about?
Yeah, it can be. It just can't be used for grants, loans, or anything that's considered bonusing. So some of these things that we're talking about are considered bonusing, so that's what we're trying to find a way around. And the MAP fund, MAP money might be the way to do that. Councillor Alcock.
Thank you. I just wanted to support that. I mean, if really all of the information is there, but really the issue is how do you pay for it? So if the MAP vehicle is a way of doing it, then to Councillor Armour's point, we did set up that fund. So if it's just trying to find a funnel to flow it through, then maybe that's a good suggestion. It's worth exploring for sure.
So as I said earlier, up until 24 hours ago, we thought we could actually do it, and now we have to find another way to do it. So if council is good with that and good with the idea of having a special COVID council meeting within 2 weeks, we'll get all of those answers. We'll figure out whatever the avenues are. We can do it because we know that the provision of safety is our highest priority right now. Agreed? Okay. All right. Then we're going to move on to reports from committees. And the first is the Huntsville Library Board, and that would be myself. And you can see there's 4 sets of minutes attached there, most of them quite old. I'm not going to go through the minutes unless there's any questions. I will update council, though, that the new CEO at the library has started. He started on May 4th. His name is David Tremblay. However, he is working remotely from BC because he hasn't moved here yet. The library board agreed, considering that he has to work remotely anyways, to give him an extension to get his family packed up and move back to Ontario. David's working on selling his house, and he's originally from North Bay. So as soon as the idea of the library opening, he will be here. But as long as things are remote, we're giving him the time to get here. So if there's no questions on the library minutes, we'll move on to the Huntsville Downtown Business Association. Councillor Stone.
All right, well, again, there's all kinds of minutes on there. If there's any questions about those old minutes, I'm happy to take the questions. But currently, the manager of the BIA has spoken with 75% of the businesses, and generally, they have only a couple months left. But they're starting to see a glimmer of hope as the retail opens slowly and shoppers slowly return. But time seems to be running out. There are 2 cafes currently that are questioning reopening at all because of the cost of stock and rehiring staff and the amount of traffic they're looking at getting when they do reopen. They're quite struggling. The BIA has canceled Midnight Madness and the sidewalk sale for the summer. They've committed some funds to the Huntsville Festival of the Arts to do some light activities like live painting, art installation in the park for people to enjoy a few at a time and from a distance. And you'll start to see some signs going up on Main Street to designate some curbside parking pickup spots, and also some large detour signs to getting people around construction and to the downtown. And that's about it, if there's any questions.
Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Councillor Stone. I guess more of a comment. I know we have some pretty strict bylaws regarding signage. I hope that we have taken necessary steps to ensure that people are allowed to do the signage in a responsible manner without any repercussions. I don't know. I don't know who can answer that. I think I'm addressing it to our worship and our directors. Thank you.
I can assure you, Councillor Fitzgerald, all of our senior staff have been working towards the idea of what we can do to make things happen for people, and where we can bend the rules without going outside of them, to get things done as quickly as possible and to help wherever we can. And I know the CEO has directed all directors to convey that to their managers as well. Councillor Thompson?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Councillor Stone. Bob, as you know, a number of restaurants in town are doing curbside pickups and ordering and that kind of thing. And I'm just wondering, are there any other businesses in the BIA or anywhere in town actually that that could also adopt that kind of a program? Whether you need to buy a t-shirt or a sweatshirt or a piece of jewelry or whatever. I wonder if there's been any discussion in the BIA or any other businesses to maybe implement that kind of a program for their businesses. It's working. It seemed to be working pretty well for a lot of our restaurants, and the participation level seems to be pretty good. And I know a lot of the restaurants that I've talked to and I've participated in find it very, very much worthwhile. And they're very appreciative, by the way, too, of the support they're getting that way. I just wonder if that could be, maybe allocated to other businesses as well. That same concept.
So through you, Your Worship, yes, they've already, if you're talking about curbside pickup or even deliveries, many of the businesses have been doing that already. The retail businesses through their websites. It has all been individually driven, and there hasn't been a collective delivery or spot yet of businesses to pick up their stuff.
Councillor Thompson, follow up?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, thank you for that, Councillor Stone. I think I've seen on our website, or maybe it's with Doppler, businesses that are open, and I'm just wondering if different businesses could take advantage of that, whether it would be through the town website, whether we can do that, or participating through Doppler or whatever, to let people know that, okay, they do have products that are available for curbside pickup type of thing.
The BIA is actually working on something like a virtual marketplace that they can all host their products from.
Okay.
I think also the province has allowed any business that has a storefront on a street to reopen. They're actually reopening to have people come into their stores. They just need to practice all the social distancing. So there's one thing to open. It's another thing if the people will come shopping. So that can be part of the challenge too. Are there any other questions for Councillor Stone? Okay. Aspen Community Hall, Councillor Schumacher, I realize you were away, but is there anything in those minutes that we should be aware of?
No, they're pretty much what's there. If anyone has any questions, I can try to answer or get the answer for you. And then, of course, we closed facilities about 5 days after that meeting in March, and there has not been any meeting since.
Any questions, Council? Huntsville Lake Bay Chamber of Commerce update, Councillor Weed.
Thank you, Your Worship. So obviously what we discussed earlier in the meeting had a lot to do with our last meeting, talking about the letter and some of the needs and of the business communities. In terms of just chamber business, we're looking at, usually we have a golf tournament in June, and that's not feasible. But rather than scrapping it all together, we are exploring looking at maybe a fall tournament or some sort of varied version of it, something that would make sense for people to want to get out and participate without having to maybe gather in the same room, etc. So we're looking at that as a possible, maybe not fundraiser, maybe a break-even event, just something for people to do. The fiscal year for the chamber is the end of September. So part of one of the strategies in all this is going to be to try and get the membership to renew all at that same time. Because right now businesses sign up and that's when their yearly membership starts on the day that they sign up for a membership. But we're hoping to maybe figure out a way to get everyone to land on basically in the same month. That way it's more streamlined. It's easier for administration and like any business or entity, we're looking at how do we reduce our costs and if we're spending a lot of time with administration, that could be one way to kind of just reduce the workload and try and trim where we can. Anyway, that's kind of the long and short of it. But if there's any questions, I'll try and answer them. Thanks.
Any questions of council? Seeing none. Our final committee report is from the Huntsville Municipal Accommodation Tax Board meeting, and our most recent board meeting was actually yesterday. That board is looking at 3 main projects going forward now. Things have changed for them as well because of COVID-19. So the board is looking to engage a firm to do a travel intention study, primarily in Ontario. Hoping to do a survey to engage what the traveling public is comfortable with considering their travel this summer, and maybe a second phase, whether or not their opinions would change for travel in the fall or winter. So they're going to engage a company to do that survey to see whether the traveling habits have changed, whether people will be looking to come to here. The other piece that they're going to put into this that I think will be very beneficial to the town of Huntsville is they're going to ask the questions that will gauge the perception of Huntsville. And I think that will be really important information for us to know as a municipality, what the perception of Huntsville is to the traveling public. So really happy to hear the board's going to invest in that. The second project is they're going to do some marketing to drive summer occupancy. They could undertake that on their own, but they have indicated that should the town of Huntsville be willing to throw in with the chamber that $30,000 marketing we just talked about before, they would join in with this project too. And the idea is to get Lake of Bays and the BIA. So all 5 organizations doing one marketing project. So I think that will be a really good venture. And then their third project will be to partner with RTO for a stay and play fuel and fun program this fall. And that'd be similar to the one they did last winter, where they did a winter getaway package, and so there was a bonus of gas cards and vouchers to spend in town if you booked hotel rooms in the dead of winter. It worked out really, really well. Brought a lot of people, put a lot of heads in beds, and there was a lot of spin-off effect. We looked at the numbers that came out just for people using their vouchers, and if they had a $25 voucher, they were generally spending about $75. If they had a $50 voucher, they were generally spending $125. So I mean, the proof was there that this stuff works and benefits all of the businesses in Huntsville, not just the hotels. So they will be doing that. So that was sort of the update from them yesterday. So 3 good projects underway there. Any questions on that? Okay, so we're 2 reports from municipal officers, and the first one up, Chris Nagy is back with our 2019 building permit program overview. Chris.
Thank you, Your Worship, and members of council. I will be sharing something here. I'll share screen. Here we go. All right. All right. So again, thank you very much. Pleased to bring forth the 2019 overview for the building permit project for the year. The report provides an overview of the accumulated revenue and direct and indirect costs associated with the building department, along with highlighting previous year permit and construction value. I am happy to say that we had another successful year, which reflects in a positive revenue base. And as a result, we were able to contribute to our building department stabilization fund in accordance with the building code and our town policies. As you can see through these charts, the town of Huntsville saw building permit numbers and construction values that exceed the 4-year average. Of those, 12 applications had values that exceeded the $1 million construction value. Those included the district water treatment plant, the expansion of Muskoka Landings, and a new hotel. We also saw 17 construction projects that valued between $500,000 and $900,000, and then 208 applications in which the construction value of 100 to 500. The remaining 500 permits for that year had an accumulated construction value of over $10 million in construction value for the area. So from this chart, you know, this kind of gives you an overview of where we saw that combined or the hot zones of that construction. It was basically, you know, kind of downtown, which led to the Canvas Brewery and Muskoka Highlands and things like that. So if there's any questions with the report, I'm happy to answer them at this point, and we can go from there.
Hey, thanks for that, Chris. Council questions? Yes, Councillor Withey.
Thank you, Worship. Thanks for this report, Chris. I've never seen a building permit heat map before, which is kind of an interesting display. I was wondering if you have a sense of what's going on year to date this year with everything that's happened with the pandemic, and where we're at as far as getting permits moving again as things are opening up a bit. Thanks.
Absolutely, through you, Your Worship. I did kind of create a small summary for that exact question. So as of today, we currently have received 182 applications, where last year we were about the 272 applications. So we're at about the 70% figure for the year. As far as issuance of those applications that we have received, we're at 102 applications being issued. The remainder of the ones that aren't issued at this point typically relate to a planning application that still needs to be presented through to actually release it. However, as a division, we're reviewing that, and I could let our director speak further to that if need be. So, and then as it's noted on the agenda with our overall revenue stream for the projection, you'll see that we have taken kind of that 70% revenue projection through that. And we are kind of hinging on that overall. So at this point and through the pandemic, we were advertising as, please get your permits in, we'll review them and we'll get them ready for when everything's released. And at this point, we are full stream to do full inspections and full review and get those permits issued that where we can. So, yeah.
Councillor Alcock.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thanks for the report, Chris. I noticed in the number of applications, of all of them, 4 of them were for apartments. And so I guess my first question is, are any of those secondary suite applications, are they listed in the apartment category or in a single family dwelling category?
So again, through you, Your Worship, the secondary suites are listed as a single family because that's the course that we took through the development charge bylaw and everything like that. So to have that continuity with those bylaws, we continue to list them as single family. The building code also relates it as a suite aspect. So it's not the overall building and it doesn't have the image of, apartment entity. Typically after 4 or a quadruplex is when it's listed as a apartment building directly. So I will kind of note that, the multi-res structures are, I would say, a hot commodity for this year. So we have been approached by several developers wanting to do that in Huntsville, and we have accepted a couple applications with that type of development. So I think going forward, we'll actually see a switch into the multi-res and the apartment buildings being the kind of norm for the area for a little bit of a trend. So yeah.
Follow up.
Please, if I may, that was great. Thanks, Chris. I'm wondering in the future if there's any way that we can note if it is a secondary suite, because on first blush, when you read this, you think, so we provided 4 affordable housing units in Huntsville in 2019, and that's quite shocking. So I guess the second question, which I think you just answered, but I know that with Sabrina Park, the towns were supposed to be coming on, I think, this year. And I know that that's not typically affordable, but it's more affordable market.
Yes.
For that, as well as the first building at Highview, which was supposed to be, I think, 30 affordable, very affordable units. So I'm wondering if both of those are captured in the 2020 figures that you're just talking about.
Again, through you, Your Worship. Yeah, you're absolutely right, because they were applied for in, actually, I believe Highview was 2018. So that would have been the 2018 figures. Sabrina Park was in 2019. So you're absolutely right. It would have been designated as a row house, not a single family, because of the type of unit. So I'd be happy to further clarify that if need be through council. But going forward, we do have the tools to streamline that clarification within our own systems for sure. No problem at all. Yeah.
That would be great. Thanks. Thanks very much, Chris.
Councillor Weed.
Thank you, Worship. Through you to Chris. Chris, are you finding that, like I noticed in the report that there were applications for commercial industrial, are you finding that people are trying to kind of pivot away from commercial spaces, and are they contemplating going towards residential with those spaces at all, or is it still full steam ahead with commercial buildings?
Through you, Your Worship. So I believe you're talking about the trend that's going on down in the Toronto area, where they're looking to generate, more residential settings within those commercial or industrial spaces. We haven't really seen that. What we've seen is, obviously, if I could highlight kind of the Crescent View area, where they've taken the industrial and made it into office space type aspect, or change it to mercantile. We're seeing that kind of change use around the town hall or around the town of Huntsville, but nothing really with respect to a commercial or industrial to a residential at this time. So yeah.
Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Worship. Chris, thanks for the report. I'm curious to know about our affordable housing program and the rebates of only $7,400 for the year. So that was for just that one sixplex on Main Street West. There was no other refunds for affordable housing?
Through you, your worship, yes, you are correct in that we only received one application last year. So I don't know if there needs to be more media coverage on that program or not. However, it's a voluntary basis to actually come and obviously take part in that. So as the bylaw is written, we can have up to 25 units to refund back, but unfortunately last year it was only the one project. So
yeah, can I just follow up on that? I'd be interested to see at some point the 5-year history on that as well, if you could manage that. Thanks, Chris, appreciate it.
Councillor Alcock.
Thank you for letting me speak again. I two things. One, it's worth noting on the question around the mixture of residential and commercial, where the new building has gone in beside Fit Gym, which has 5 commercial spaces on the ground floor and 5 residential apartments on the upper floor. That has filled up. They're not in yet, but there's been incredible interest in that particular building, both on the commercial end and, as I understand, on the residential. So, and that is, right at the corner of West and Center. So it's kind of, well, past the park. So there is a little bit of activity, and the take up on that was solid, really solid. So I think that's a good lesson for us. And so on that, and then if I may, just on Councillor Fitzgerald's comment, for sure, I totally support you. We need to look at that. And the same number came up in a report that's coming up about how we had 30,000 unused affordable housing dollars from last year, and now it's up to 47,000. So clearly we're not getting our message out, and I think we need to consolidate all of this and figure out how we want to use these funds and how we want to get it out to the community. So I agree with you, Councillor Fitzgerald, for sure. And we need to look at all of those different pots that, as I said, one was in our finance report and one was in this. So something's not happening and we need to fix it. Thanks.
Any other questions for Chris? Okay, Chris, thanks so much for that.
thank you for your time.
No resolution on that one. So the next business is a report on a grader replacement, and Kevin's with us. Yes, Kevin, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. An aspect of council's time, I won't go over the whole report. I will touch on any points the council wants to question on, if there's any questions at this time.
Councillor Armour.
Thanks, Kevin, for the report on this. I'm just curious, have we looked at leasing graders, and is there any savings to be made there?
Actually, in the report, we looked at, there was a part in there for leasing them, and it was $6,000 a month, $6,500 a month, just above option 1, which came out to $78,000 a year.
Any other questions? So we have a resolution moved by Councillor Thompson and seconded by Councillor Armour. Be it resolved that council authorize the purchase of a used grader to replace the 2004 Volvo grader at a cost of $146,800 plus HST to be funded from the 2020 approved fleet capital budget. Questions? All in favor? And that carries. Thanks, Kevin. Steve, you're still here? Did you
Yes,
get
I
my-
am.
Okay, the Health Hub contract extension.
Yes, this is just a report to extend the Health Hub contract down for the use of the Port Sydney Fire Hall 2 days a week. They've actually been there working out of there for the last 4 years, and they want to continue with the program. It does not interfere with anything that fire does. Theirs is a daytime use. They've actually been shut down due to COVID-19, but they're looking to get started again in the next month or so. So it's a report to renew the contract with the Health Hub for another 2 years. And happy to answer any questions.
Okay, I'll read the resolution first. I have a resolution moved by Councillor Withey, seconded by Councillor Thompson. Be it resolved that the town enter into a 2-year agreement with Cottage Country Family Health Team with an option to renew for an additional 2 years for the use of the Port Sydney Fire Hall as a health hub 2 days a week, and further that the agreement be completed to the satisfaction of the CAO. Questions? Councillor Schumacher.
My understanding in it is very well used down there. Is that correct, Steve?
Yes, it is well used. They have quite a following.
Councillor Withey.
Thank you, Worship. My question is about the 2-year deal. Is there, other than perhaps running up until the next municipal election, is there a reason why we wouldn't consider a longer term and not have to revisit this every 2 years?
Steve?
Through you, Mayor Terziano, they've asked for a 2-year contract, and we put in an automatic 2-year renewal in there to the satisfaction of the town. I think down the road, their long-range look is they'd like to find a permanent home where they could extend their services further as their clientele grows. But it's their request for a 2-year agreement, and we're just meeting their request.
Any other questions? I'll call the question. All in favor? That's carried. Greg, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Okay,
Thank
good.
you, Your Worship.
I'm going to read the resolution first. This is on the establishment of a 55-plus Ontario Winter Game Legacy Fund Working Group, moved by Councillor Schumacher, seconded by Councillor Alcock. Be it resolved that Council hereby establishes a 55-plus Ontario Winter Games Legacy Fund Working Group consisting of the following individuals: Councillor Jonathan Weeb, Simone Babineau, Diane B. Kraft, Fran Coleman, Greg Pilling, and the Muskoka, or the Ministry of Heritage, Sport, Tourism, and Cultural Industries representative. And further, that the mandate of the working group will be to create an application process, create a marketing plan, and make a recommendation to council for the allocation of funds and equipment to local amateur senior groups. And further, that the working group shall cease once the allocations are announced. Greg, do you want to speak to this?
Your Worship. Just a quick highlight, just everything's in the report, but just as an update, GOC members will be consulted, the people that were involved in the production of the games, and they will have input into the process as we value all the work they have done and look forward to having their feedback included. And just very exciting result of having over $80,000 in legacy available for our community. Any questions?
Questions of council. Councillor Stone.
Hi, yeah, so I did get a concerned phone call from a citizen about the fact that there's so many government people on this awards committee. There's only one, I think, Diane, that's not linked to the government. So can you explain how you're going to include others? You mentioned that in your preamble.
Great.
Yes, thank you, and through you, Your Worship. There's been a lot of consultation with Fran Coleman. It was originally set up as a plan with our director back in April of 2019. It was when we originally submitted the plan right after the games. We were obligated to submit that 120 days out. And in the discussion, it was we would include the complete GOC Games Operating Committee in the process and take their feedback in. We're going to have a survey process for them to be engaged and provide us their suggestions on the application process, the marketing plan, and the allocation. So we're going to include all the GOC members that were critical and amazing people that were able to have us have this legacy. So that's how we're including them. And then, you know, we have Councillor Wiebe and Fran Coleman and Diane Beecraft. Diane is the Club 55 president, and we wanted to have representation from senior groups as well. So we tried to get multiple people in from the community. Simone's representing the town so that the town can also apply for funding. That is a request of the province. They would like us to make sure that the town is able to also use some of the funding for senior programming.
Further to that, Councillor Stone, I did have a conversation with Fran Coleman, who did chair the entire games, and about the committee structure, and she's very comfortable with the structure, and assured me that they would be talking to the different volunteers and chairs of groups that participated in these games, and definitely getting their input. But they want to keep the working group small and tight to get these funds distributed, because it has been a long time coming. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Greg. Greg, I know part of the mandate here is allocation. What are the parameters for where this money can go?
Through you, Your Worship. The way the agreement with the province lays it out here, I'm just going to pull it up on my report. Sorry for the delay. The goals of it is to increase opportunities for the development of athletes to pursue competitive goals and achieve their personal potential, to develop, promote, and enhance amateur sport at the community level. And there's a note there: funds are not to be used for the general purpose of operating costs of any municipality, including the recipient or third party. Our plan was specifically, because it was a 55+ Winter Games, was that it would be specifically go towards 55+ recreation and programming. So it can be sport or programming.
Any other questions? Councillor Wiebe.
Thank you, Worship. Just a comment, and further to that, when I chaired the last games that we held in Huntsville in 2013, there was a small legacy fund after that as well. And really the goal was to try to reinvest in a way that would set us up to become better hosts in the future for events like this, because clearly after seeing the event and participating in the event as a volunteer and seeing the legacy, it's a great event for our community. So hopefully the world gets back to somewhat normal in the not too distant future, and we can take another run at possibly hosting these set of games in the future, because it's such a win for the community. So thanks, Greg.
Thank you.
Okay, Council, you've heard the resolution. All in favor? And that's carried. Thanks for that, Greg. And I think you have another report, community policing.
I do.
Okay.
Thank you, Your Worship. And through you, this is just a renewal of the current agreement with the Community Policing Office in the Canada Summit Centre. It involves the equipment as well. There is no cost to the municipality as we get funding through the district for it. Are there any questions on this report?
I'll just read the resolution. Moved by Councillor Wiebe, seconded by Councillor Schumacher. Be it resolved that the town enter into a 4-year agreement with the Ontario Provincial Police with an option to renew for an additional 4 years for the use of the Community Policing Office and leasing of computer equipment and software at the Canada Summit Centre, and further that the agreement be completed to the satisfaction of the CAO. Questions? All in favor? And that carries. Okay, Greg, we've got, for information only, but an update on summer 2020 events.
Yes, thank you again, Your Worship. To keep it short, a lot of information in this report regarding the summer sport groups and summer events, primarily the events that go through the special event process. Just with some updates on what groups have been doing. It's moving very quickly. It's changing daily. Since Monday, I've had 3 more cancellations. So DocFest has officially canceled and they've pulled their backup date. So there will not be a DocFest this year. And the BIA notified me that they have canceled DocFest and Midnight Madness. Sorry, Midnight Madness and Sidewalk Sale. 4 weddings have canceled for July. This is all just since Monday. So there's been a lot going on with people understanding. Overall, everyone's been extremely understanding. Everybody knows the situation. We haven't had any negative conversations with customers. They're all well aware of what's going on, but they're also, it's given the circumstance, and it doesn't look like we're going to be seeing any mass gatherings anytime soon. Any questions with this report?
This is not, there's no resolution here. This is for information, but if there's any questions of council to Greg on any of these events, Councillor Withey.
Thank you, Worship. I was a little surprised when I read this report that Band on the Run has a confirmed new date. I'm surprised that that's happened. I didn't think we were doing that for the very same reason we didn't let Tri-Muskoka or the Ironman do that, because once again, with the confirmed date, you're going to get people coming up early from out of town to train the route. So I haven't seen this before anywhere. I don't recall discussing Band on the Run. How have they confirmed a date? I didn't think we were doing that.
Greg, are you still there? Yeah, Greg?
Yeah, through Your Worship. The instructions I've been given at this point have been to cancel all bookings up to July 1st, and we're been able to proceed with customers after that date, given that their event may not be able to be held, depending on government situations, decisions by the council. So they've basically taken their permit from June 13th and moved it to September 12th because it fit in the schedule. They are, and I meant to mention this earlier on, I apologize, they are hosting a virtual race on June 13th. They've got over 700 people registered. So they have made a great change to their event. But at this time, they are holding September 12th, but with the uncertainty that it's not sure if we're going to be able to have it.
Councillor Withey?
Thank you, Worship. But again, I mean, I gotta ask you, Greg, we discussed Ironman, and this was never in front of us for discussion. I don't think it's responsible to have a confirmed date out there because of people coming up training. I don't know why we hadn't seen this before. So what's going on? I didn't think that was the plan with any of these things. Everyone else is canceling past July 1st or whatever the date you mentioned, because they recognize that it's likely not anything going to be happening. So I'm concerned that this date is out there now, and what could happen starting in August with people showing up thinking that there's a date if it hasn't officially been even canceled then. But I personally have received calls from people that, friends of mine that were signed up for the Ironman even a couple of days ago saying, is it still canceled? Is it still canceled? So people get excited about these things, and I think that we could have the same issue that we discussed with Ironman. I don't understand how we didn't discuss this one before, and how they can publish a confirmed date. I don't think that's right.
CEO Corey, did you want to speak to this?
Sure, thank you, Worship. So just with respect to the dates, we obviously are gauging the timelines that are being put in place by the province as the restrictions are being lifted. We're also taking the advice from the Chief Medical Officer of Health, who has more or less indicated that with the timelines that the province is proposing, which each phase is roughly 2 to 4 weeks, as long as there's not a resurgence, I did direct staff that to cancel any programs up until the end of June, just based on that information provided from the province and the Chief Medical Officer of Health. The reason the Ironman proposal was before council is we actually have a binding agreement with them that speaks to funding and licensing, so that one had come forward sooner. And so the information being provided to you today is based on a request that I had made to Greg to put in front of council any event that we might be affiliated with. And council does have the discretion, if they wish to provide direction to staff, to advise these organizations that we are not proceeding. I'd have to refer to Greg with respect to any type of contract we might have with the organizations, if any. But council certainly has the ability to say that we are not going to allow these events to take place in our community. We're seeing it across the province, specifically in Toronto. They've decided that they are not having any daycare programs right until the end of the summer, regardless of what the provincial restrictions would allow them to have. So it is before you today for information, and if there's a direction from council that you wish for staff to follow, then we will certainly adhere to that. Thank you, Your Worship.
Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Yes, and CAO Corey has made that distinction, I think, between the two programs, or the two events. One was with Trisport, was of course we had that contractual obligation, and they requested a change of date, so we have to look at that, and that's why it was before council. Whereas this other one, we don't have a contractual obligation with them. Plus the fact that they've moved it to that date, and I mean, we're just now at the end of May, and we still have lots of time for them to determine whether or not it's feasible, given what's happening with COVID-19 and directions from the province and our own Dr. Gardner type of thing with regards to these things. So I'm not in favor of requesting they cancel it at this point. I think we can always do that if it's necessary at a future date. The distinction, of course, is the contractual obligation between Trisport and Band on the Run. Thank you.
Councillor Withey.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think I would, I don't agree with what Councillor Thompson just said. I think that I would prefer not having a date confirmed and seeing as things roll out during the summer to confirm something in due time, which we will know as time marches on. Again, with these specific types of events, and it may not be some contractual thing if that's the distinction you want to make, but is the Canada Summit Center and municipal roads, and people do with these specific events come up early to train on the route. So that's where I think if we're being responsible, we can not have a confirmed date and revisit it as the summer goes on. So you could reestablish the date September 12th, say on August 12th, if it looks like it's all clear. But to do this now, you'll get people getting excited and making their plans to travel here, which I don't think is responsible or prudent.
I think that we're getting a little bit caught up in the idea that the schedule says it's a confirmed date. I think they have a permit that holds the date for them. We also have a permit that holds the date for Nuit Blanc. We have a permit that holds the date for the Macaroni Festival. I'm not sure that the confirmed word in that one is anything more than a word. As far as people traveling to train, I don't believe people train for Band on the Run. I understand they train for triathlons. I don't believe they train for Band on the Run. And I think we have lots of time to make a decision on whether we would allow that event on that date going forward. Councillor Schumacher.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was just going to reiterate the same thing, that I don't feel people train to the same level for Band on the Run that they would obviously for the Ironman, and the fact that that impacts them going on to also different calibers of races. They're great organizers. They're local organizers for Band on the Run. And I think it's just sort of giving them that ability to maybe keep it open. I think they're responsible enough to know that if it's not going to be a go, it's not going to be a go, and they'll do their part. But to make a decision on April 12th, that September 12th, are we going to be in enough time to organize streets and let them have participants and stuff at the point? I don't know the answer to that either, and how long it would take to organize. So I'm fine with just leaving it open, and we'll make the decision as we get closer.
Greg?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just wanted to add to CAO Corey's note about the contract. All of our our permits do have force de majeure and the ability for the town to cancel the contract. So those parameters are in place in every agreement we have.
Councillor Stone.
Just a quick question from Greg. So can anybody cancel their event without any penalties, regardless of how far out they're looking?
At this time, anything canceled up till July 1st can be canceled. And if there's COVID related cancels, so weddings have started to cancel, and we have been refunding full deposits to anyone canceling due to COVID.
Well,
So
that's
they
great.
can't, sorry.
I hope so. If anybody's even just worried about having their event in September or October, and I hope we give them their full refund.
Through Your Worship, that is exactly how we're operating, and the customers daily, I'm getting requests, and the fact that we're getting feedback from us, the customers are very thankful that they're in communication. I have many letters from customers just thanking them that we're there, we're able to respond, and that we're offering refunds and executing as we can. People are holding out hope. The 4 weddings that canceled this week, they're just holding out hope. They've given up because they've got family has to come from UK on 2 of them. So they're just holding hope, and that's all it is. And they're trying to hope things change, but it's just not, they're aware it's not happening, but we are providing the full refund.
Okay, council good with that? All right. I'm going to suggest before we get into the financial reports that we take a quick 5-minute break. I'm not sure, Crystal, what you'll do with this, if anything, but if you just take the video off your screen, and we'll see everybody in 5 minutes.
Hey, where's the fire? Well, he said, no, sorry, I'm in a council meeting. We're just on a break. And for some reason, my internet at home screwed up. So I was on Zoom through my phone. So every time you were calling me, it would throw me out of the meeting. Yeah. And I couldn't hear anything, and then I'd have to decline. And yeah, so no, it's just a 5-minute break. We're just about to head into financials and anyway. So what's going on? Wawanesa did what?
can email Crystal whenever you're ready.
Yeah, I'm ready.
You let me ready?
Yeah.
Mayor Terziano, you're good to go as soon as your counselors return.
Thank you, Crystal. Okay, council, if you're there, let's light up again. Almost all back. Julia, you and Reva are ready to go. We're into the finances now. I'm just waiting for a couple more counselors. Okay, we have reports from municipal officers. We have a financial 2019 financial results that I think Reva is going to walk us through. A very detailed report that hopefully council has read. A very good report. Reva, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I'm not going to pull the report up on the screen because it's a lot of information, but I will go through some detail. I'm not going to go through absolutely everything because there are quite a bit of numbers in the report. So overall, the town of Huntsville ended 2019 with a surplus of just under $764,000. So this is the difference between the budgeted net levy and the actual net levy for 2019. So the bulk of this surplus came from corporate services, which was largely the result of increases in supplementary taxes, which were just over $302,000 higher than budget. And there was also a significant increase in investment income of about $168,000. There was also a surplus in the development services division, which was the direct result of an increase in planning and development activity in 2019. So the next several pages of the report show the breakdowns by department of the operating revenues and expenses. I think it's important to note that these figures don't include the reserve transfers or long-term debt. I'm not going to go into detail of these department and divisional summaries unless there are specific questions about them. So moving on to, I think it's page 138 of the agenda package. There's the 5-year operating expenses trends. So some of the significant variances between the 2018 and 19 actual expenses in salaries, wages, and benefits, they increased by just over $820,000. So this was largely due to the implementation of the market study, which was at the beginning of 2019. There were also a few new positions hired in 2019. And some increased hours in winter operations, which was for the beginning part of 2019. In materials and supplies, there was an increase of just under $400,000. And this is largely due to hydro costs at the Canada Summit Center, and again, increased costs for winter control, which was for the beginning part of 2019. In contracted services, there was an increase of about $450,000. And this is mainly due to the 70% of the MAT tax that was paid to the MAT board. In rents and financial expenses, there was an increase of about 550,000 that related to the purchase of surplus lands. These were funded by transfers from the parkland reserves, so it didn't have a net levy impact. On the next page, we're seeing the 5-year operating revenues. So some of the significant variances here. In revenue, there was a decrease of about $2.9 million, and this directly relates to building sales that happened in 2018 that didn't happen in 2019, and those are one-time type sales, so it makes sense that there's such a decrease. In deferred revenue, there was an increase of about $380,000. And again, this relates directly to the surplus land that was purchased that I mentioned in the operating expenses. In the other property tax revenue, that increase is again largely due to the MAT tax that was collected. We collected just over $720,000 in 2019. So the next part of the report is capital expenses, and actual expenditures were about $1.3 million less than budgeted in 2019. And these were largely due to a few things. So the Main Street Streetscape project, we budgeted costs of about $305,000, but there weren't actually any costs incurred in 2019. What happened was at the end of the year, we transferred about $571,000 into a separate reserve specifically for this project that's going to be used in future years. So the reserve transfer isn't included in that $1.3 million variance. There were also several projects that were budgeted that didn't happen in 2019 for various reasons, some for pricing increases, time constraints, that kind of thing. So these projects have been deferred to future years, and some of them include the Stevenson Hall roof, which was about $100,000 budgeted project. The landline phone system, I think, was budgeted for $83,000, and the theater staging project, which was about $25,000. The Macaulay Robertson renovation project also began in 2019 but wasn't completed. So the remaining unspent costs were about $680,000, and they were carried forward to the 2020 capital plan. The next several pages of the report, and it is quite an extensive report, they detail all of the capital projects that were budgeted in 2019 by division and any variances for each of those projects. So again, I'm not going to go into detail of all of those projects unless somebody has a specific question about them. The next piece of the report is about long-term debt. So at the end of 2019, the town owed just under $6.6 million. So there was no new debt in 2019 and no new debt budgeted for 2020. The last debenture that was issued was actually in 2010. So the long-term graph is actually illustrating that the balances and the principal and interest payments are steadily decreasing as the debt is being paid off. So the next big drop in principal and interest payments is going to be in 2024. So the next piece is the reserves. So the reserves are funds that have already been set aside by the town, and they're being held and used for future use. So at the end of the year, the town had approximately $12.8 million in these reserves. So some of the big changes in the reserve balances this year was the surplus of about $764,000. The building department also had a surplus of $473,000 that's transferred directly into the building reserve. The MAT funds that weren't spent in 2019 were transferred into a separate reserve, and that was about $113,000. We also received a modernization grant in 2019 for $604,000, and that's been transferred into a separate reserve account. And again, the Main Street Streetscape project has its own separate reserve for $571,000 at the end of 2019. So the next several pages detail the balances and the purposes of each of the reserve funds that are being held. The obligatory reserves, these are funds that are tied to specific agreements or legislation, and they can only be used for certain purposes. So included in the $717,000 federal gas tax amount at the end of 2019. 600,000 of that has been earmarked for the Main Streetscape project. So in 2019, I think it's important to note too that we received about 752,000 in development charges, and we spent almost 600,000 of that. So moving on to the property taxes section. So the taxes outstanding at the end of 2019 were slightly higher than the 5-year average. But in discussions with the manager of taxation, he does review this listing regularly, and there's nothing concerning at this point. The growth assessment, the next chart in the growth assessment there is, it's showing the real growth that was built into the assessment for 2019. And then if you go down a page, it's showing the supplementary taxes and the tax write-offs. So over the past couple of years, you can see in that graph that the taxes written off are steadily decreasing and supplementary taxes are increasing, which is great to see. The supplementary taxes that are those that we received in 2019, and they help to reduce the tax rate for 2020. So that's kind of high level presentation of that super long report with lots and lots of numbers in it. So I think that was all the detail that I had planned. If anybody has any specific questions, I'm happy to answer.
Okay, I see lots of hands, Reva, so I'll start with Councillor Withey.
Thank you, Your Worship. I won't take a lot of time. I don't have a specific question. I just wanted to congratulate Julia, Reva, everybody involved with this report. I think it's excellent. And I think it certainly shows that we've been doing a good job here and we're on pretty solid footing moving forward. So that was my comment. I want to say thanks. This is really great.
Thank you. Well said. Deputy Mayor Alcock.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I very quickly, same comment. I have to say, it was such a pleasure reading this report. It was so clear. And, you know, you almost didn't need to walk us through it, although that's always good. But it was just such a great report. And I really thank you for that. You did answer, I did have a question around operating, but you answered that. And last plug here, one more time, we mentioned it earlier, the issue around affordable housing in our reserves. We have 44,467. So my plug is that post this meeting, we start looking at consolidating our outstanding. We've got a little bit here for affordable housing and what we're doing and what we could be doing, and maybe just looking at how we calculate what our assets and what we could be doing. I'm not explaining it very well, but I think you get the drift. I see, Reva, you're taking notes, and so that's really great. Thanks again. That's all I wanted to say.
Councillor Fitzgerald, did you have your hand up?
I did not, but I do have a comment. Thank you. Great report. Like everyone has said previously, really appreciate it. Straightforward. Couldn't agree with Councillor Alcock's comment regarding affordable housing. I would like to again just reiterate that we need to review that by law and policy and make sure that we use those funds to the full advantage to help the community out with the housing. That's it. Thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Thompson.
Sorry about that, Your Worship. I had you on small screen here for a moment. I just want to go back to the 5-year operating trend. So to Reva, 2018, that big bump was as a result of the sale of the Waterloo building, Reva?
Yeah, so we're looking at the 5-year operating trends.
I'm sorry, yes.
The revenues.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that the $2.9 million decrease between 2018 and 19, that was because of the sale of the Waterloo building. And you can see in the 2018 change, the $4 million, that, you know, that's is a substantial increase from 2017, right? So yeah, that's the building.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. And if I may, Your Worship, with regards to the affordable housing rebate fund, I think maybe part of the challenge is I guess finding local builders that want to participate in this. I mean, the fund is there and they know it's there, but I guess if you're a builder, maybe there's more appeal in a conventional kind of a building as opposed to affordable housing. So maybe that's part of the reason that that fund is not being used. And maybe we could do more to encourage builders to get involved in that. I don't know how we would do that other than increasing that fund if we could possibly do that. But anyway, just a comment with regards to that.
Julia, you want to?
I just want to just add one quick comment just with affordable housing. This was the first year that we have a policy in place where we actually transfer any of the unspent funds that are in our operating budget to the reserve. So even though that money didn't get spent, we are putting it into a reserve. So it will be there when we do start to have those projects come forward.
Good, thank you. Deputy Mayor Alcock.
Thank you. I promise to be short. And I appreciate actually the comment from Councillor Thompson. That kind of gets to my point that, you know, there probably is a reason why people aren't tapping into it. So I think it's incumbent upon us to look at, so what's a good way for us to use the dollars, right? Because potentially we might have some other funds that we can put in the reserves. And so I know that a number of us have talked about maybe there are other partnership arrangements, and that's how we could use it, because clearly developers are not interested in the money that we have available. But we do know we have, you know, people who are looking for affordable housing. So we gotta work at trying to have those two connect. So I actually do appreciate those comments, Councillor Thompson.
Okay. Thanks, Reva, for that. No resolution on that one. But our next one, I have a resolution moved by Councillor Whitty, seconded by Councillor Stone. Be it resolved that Council approve the amendments to the Budget and Financial Controls Policy, Budget Financial 21, Corp 6019, as attached in Schedule B to Report Corp 2020-15. Julia and Reva, you want to walk us through that report?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. So what we did, I mean, we went through the whole budget process. Budget was approved January 27th. After that, Julia and I met with all of the divisional directors, departmental managers, with the CAO, Corey, and with yourself, Mayor Terziano. And we asked everybody, you know, what went well, what didn't go well. So the first part of the report in Schedule A is kind of recommendations to deal with any of the issues that came up in throughout the 2020 budget process, and how we're going to make the 2021 process that much more efficient and increase communication and transparency that much more. The second piece of the report that came out of these debrief sessions was that there were some minor grammatical amendments required to the Budget and Financial Controls Policy, mainly around the change in the committee structure, right? So when we originally did this policy, we were, you know, we had each division had their separate committees, and now we're general committees. So we needed to update the policy for that. What we also did is added a paragraph so that if there's a committee structure change in the future, we can go and just amend this policy without having to bring it back to council, specifically for those changes in the wording around, you know, what reports go to committee and that sort of thing. I think there were maybe some grammatical changes to make things clearer in the definitions. And that's basically it.
Okay. Questions from council on the budget update, budget policy update. This will be basically the format we'll follow to develop the 2021 budget. Questions? Seeing none, all in favor? And that carries. One more, I guess, Julia, this is for information only, but it's a financial and town services update.
Thank you, Your Worship. So this report is to provide an update on the financial projections for 2020 due to COVID-19, as well as to provide a summary on the town services as we begin to move forward into the recovery phase. So back in April, we reported that we would be looking at a forecast of a surplus of about $831,000. And since that time, there have been a few changes that we want to provide just some high-level updates on. So for the first, so in addition to the staff changes that we did bring forward in April, there's been additional layoffs. So if these layoffs continue to the end of the year, we're looking at another, an additional $500,000 savings. And again, this is to the end of the year. So as programs begin to come back online, this will be further reduced, but could potentially also be offset by some additional revenues if it comes back online. So to ensure the safety, so the town hall, to ensure the safety of the residents and staff, in March, the town hall was closed to the public and most staff began to work from home. And now as various workplaces are starting to come back online, we're looking at a phased in approach for bringing back a safe opening of town hall. So staff are starting to return to town hall. And with this and the gradual opening, we would need we'd need to bring back a custodial staff to ensure that the building is clean and safe. It's also anticipated that a customer service representative would be required to ensure that adequate screening is done once we bring the public back into this building. For the finance department, there's currently 2 positions that are vacant at the moment. And we are looking at filling the position of the finance clerk, which was previously the assistant deputy clerk. So we're looking at filling that for early June. Back when we reported in April, we noted that we forecasted that the locks would not be operating due to the restrictions that are in place. So now we're looking at bringing back the services, but on a limited basis, and that they would be returning from, they'd run from Friday to Monday of each week. With fire training, because of the restrictions that they couldn't have in-person training, so now that those have started to be lifted somewhat and we can put adequate protection or safety precautions in place, they're looking at bringing back some of that training for the remainder of the year. And lastly, the vacant position in the planning department is to be filled. So that's to be able to continue with a significant number of inquiries and workload of the planning department. So because of these changes and other minor adjustments made by staff, the forecast to the end of the year, we would be looking at a surplus of about 1.2 million. And again, that's assuming that all those other programs are closed until the end of the year. And it's just really important to remember that you will see us come back because we will have programs that we are bringing back online as the restrictions begin to be lifted and we can bring them back safely. So it is anticipated that that surplus will decline as we move through the year. And we'll continue to monitor these changes and bring back updates on the finances and also on the service changes that as we move forward each month.
Okay. Thank you for that. We'll go to questions. I see hands. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. With regards to the $1.2 million through you to Julia, is that net, Julia? Because we're obviously going to be missing out on a lot of revenues with the shutdown of our sports facilities and so on and so forth. So is that 1.2 million a net?
Yeah, so that would be the net savings between the lost revenues and the foregone expenses as well.
And the second one, if I may, thank you for that, Julia. Second one, if I may, Your Worship, with regards to the locks, where did that go? The opening it from Monday to Friday, I'm just wondering why Monday to Friday. I'm thinking I'd probably be more in favor of having that as a 7-day. if we could possibly do that, having that throughout the entire week during the voting season. I'm just wondering what the rationale was for Monday to Friday.
That's actually Friday to Monday. So it would be Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday.
Okay, great. Thanks for that, Your Worship. So why would we not be looking at 7 days a week on that? I appreciate the volume of traffic would be more on the weekends for sure, but why not through the entire week? Just wondering.
I'm not sure if Director Hernan wants to answer that one.
I was going to say, Steve?
Thank you, through you, Mayor. We were just looking at reduced services. I know that was the direction council was giving us, and we looked at the 4 busy days per se, the Mondays grabbing the holiday weekends. And we went back through the history of what days the actual locks are being used and what hours, and we picked the key times. That's why we're suggesting a reduced service level and bringing it back in Friday to Monday.
Follow up, Councillor Thompson?
Yeah, yes, thank you, Your Worship, through you to Director Hernan. So then in the event that, I understand that rationale, Steve, thank you for that. In the event that, okay, we do see an increased need for other days of the week, are we fluid enough that we could accommodate, increasing the number of days and the hours?
Steve?
We'd have to hire an additional staff member. Right now, we're planning to bring 1 student back as opposed to bringing 2 students back. But if we wanted to go to a full 7-day-a-week operation, we could bring that back online, but that was not our intent at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Your Worship. My question is regarding lock operations as well. I know that there's a lot of people out on the waters these days. I have the luxury of working on the lakes and seeing a lot of boat traffic. So, Steve, if I may, do you have a breakdown of the cost per day or cost per weekend or whatever information you have available? I think maybe we should open June and possibly consider some other days. What would the cost of that second position be?
So an approximate cost, just for running numbers, an 8-hour shift will cost us about $160 with all our payroll costs and whatnot involved. We did just receive word this week that we received a part-time student grant that we could apply to some time down there as well. We haven't calculated that in, but if you're thinking you wanted to extend it to catch the weekends of June, September, we could extend it to that, or we could go to a full 7-day operation through the summer. Whatever council wishes. We are just following the direction of trying to stop non-essential services, but we recognize that there is going to be some desire to have something down there.
Okay, Councillor Fitzgerald.
Just to follow up. So basically 160 a day, 8 extra days would be $1,280. So I would suggest that maybe Councillor Thompson and I are on the right path here. And I think there's a lot of things that people are missing out on. And boating is one of them. And let's give them the opportunity to do that by going through the locks. So I would be willing to put a motion on the floor for that if I could.
So right now in our plan, it's a July 1st to Labor Day, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, 10 to 6. So that's in the plan. If you want to put a motion on the table, if you kind of suggest what it might be, we'll see if Tanya can work on it while we move on.
Yeah. So I'm considering adding June. The weather's fantastic. And why don't we increase the days of the week to all days of the week as well? For July and August.
Are you proposing June for all days of the week or June for weekends?
June for weekends and July and August for all days.
Would there be a seconder for that? Okay, so there's Tanya. Can you prepare a resolution for that? Yeah. Okay, so we'll continue on and we'll get a resolution that we can put on the table for that. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I would totally agree with opening up weekends for June, but I think we should also extend that to at least the end of September. So we're looking at at those 2 shoulder seasons of June and September as well, and full time through July and August. That would be my thoughts on that.
So you'd like to see weekends in June and September?
Yes.
Okay. Got that, Tanya? Okay. Other questions outside of the locks for Julia? Oh. Okay, so that was for information only. We will get a resolution done up and come back to it once we're ready for that. That was for information only, wasn't it? Resolution, okay. We have another for information only report from our CAO on the recovery.
Thank you, Your Worship. So before I dive into just a brief summary of the recovery report that was circulated to Council, I really want to express my appreciation to the COVID-19 recovery tactical team, which included Crystal Bess-Serreris, Tanya Kalea, Steve Hernan, Kirsten Maxwell, Julia McKenzie, Laurie O'Brien, and Lisa Smith. It was this team that actually put this document together, and I have to say that I certainly am very appreciative of all their hard work, and it will give us the platform that we need to open our facilities safely. So I won't go through the entire document. Council's had a chance to review it, but what I just want to touch on is the 3 key areas of focus that we looked at when we developed the document. The first is obviously the most important, and it's the health and safety of our communities, our employees, our members of council. That was one of the lenses that we looked through, as well as fiscal responsibility. We've heard loud and clear from council that certainly is extremely important that we maintain our fiscal responsibility as we start to bring back services once the restrictions are lifted. And also the recovery and what's needed within our community. So it's not always about costs, it's also about needs within our community to help our community move forward as we come out of the pandemic. So the full recovery analysis is contained in the package, your agenda package, and it talks about really what we're gauging our activities coming back into play on is based on the provincial framework. So as all of you are aware, the province has come up with their recovery plan. That speaks to 3 phases, and it looks like we're looking at roughly 2 to 4 weeks for each phase as the restrictions are lifted. So the province has just recently placed us into phase 1. We've seen some restrictions lifted, such as businesses who have storefront accesses off of streets they can open. We've seen some marinas open, some golf courses open. So we're seeing some light restrictions being lifted. The next part that we would be looking at is the different activities that we currently offer, so activities or services that the town offers. And we would use our checklist to determine if it meets the criteria of the province. And as noted in your document, as all of those fields turn to a yes, there is the potential that we can activate that activity. The next thing we would look at is certainly from a health and safety and a human resources requirement. As the mayor alluded to earlier this morning, just because the province lifts the restrictions and grants the ability for us to move forward doesn't mean that we have to. So I think each individual municipality has to gauge, is it safe? Is it financially reasonable to proceed? And is it in the best interest of the community? So once that checklist, that activity becomes yes across the board, we would make sure that we could proceed with the activity safely and make sure that we have the human resources to support it. So as council's aware, we didn't proceed with hiring part-time positions. We have laid some staff off. So we just need to make sure we have the resources to actually carry out the activity. The next thing we certainly would look at is the financial impact to the organization. So for example, if the province all of a sudden said you could have gatherings of 50 or more people, and pools were no longer restricted on the non-essential list, and the municipality had the ability to actually reactivate programs, we would have to look at, is that financially feasible? We would now have to fill the pool, heat the pool, put the chemicals in the pool. We could start programming up, and then there is a chance, if there's a resurgent, that the province could actually pull it back and restrict that use yet again. So we really need to be cautious on whether putting that investment into opening that activity is financially feasible if there's a resurgent in cases. So that's a key part of our recovery plan. Then what we would do is we would look at, we have Appendix D in the recovery plan that talks about, can we actually resume the service in a safe manner? So we have lots of checklists that we would have to follow with that as well. So currently council has given new direction to proceed with determining what levels of staffing are required based on the services that we provide and to adjust accordingly. However, if we ever got into a situation whereby activating that level of service would be fairly cost prohibitive to the municipality, we will be back in front of council asking what you would like us to do. So if we've got all the checklists in place, the province says we can do it, but there's a bit of a red flag from a financial perspective, we will be back in front of council getting your approval to either proceed or not proceed. But generally, things that we feel that we can bring back online within a reasonable budget, we will certainly try to do that. So, for example, last week the Premier had lifted the restrictions. We were able to open some park areas, some sports fields. That's something in discussions with the team and looking at our checklist, we could do reasonably, financially responsibly without having to get council approval to do that. So that's what the recovery plan speaks to. That is the process that we as staff would like to propose to council that we use. And if there's any questions or comments, Your Worship, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you for that. Questions of council. Councillor Withey.
Thank you, Worship. I have a great report, Denise. I have a request, and this is something that I'm seeing in my business a fair amount. On page 17 of your report, you mentioned, hang on, I'm just pulling it up here. You mentioned the group benefit plan. Green Shield has coverage for psychologists. I was wondering, because as you know, in our area, there isn't a lot of psychologists or psychiatrists for that matter. I've had requests with plans for group benefit plans that I have out in the community that we contact our provider, in this case Green Shield, and have them add psychoanalysts to that list, of which there's a lot more access in our area to those. And that will be, that will extend the coverage to pick that up as well. And it's usually, if there's a cost, it's very minimal. But I find for where we live, for people to get that kind of help, psychologist isn't broad enough. We need to add psychoanalysts in there too.
Other questions? Okay, and there's no resolution for that. That was for information only. Thanks, Denise. Back to the locks, if you're ready. I have a resolution. We need 2/3 votes for this to carry, but moved by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Fitzgerald. Be it resolved that staff be directed to restore the lock operation to full normal operational season based on an 8-hour shift, 7 days a week in July and August, and weekends for June, September, and October to Thanksgiving weekend. Questions? Does that cover what you were looking for? Okay. All in favor? That carries. Okay. We are now moving on to bylaws. So I have a resolution moved by Deputy Mayor Alcock, seconded by Councillor Withey. Be it resolved that bylaw numbers 2020-48 to 2020-51 inclusive be reported and read a first, second, and third time and finally passed this 27th day of May 2020. Bylaw 2048 road allowance closure bylaw 2049, tax levy bylaw 2050, EIA tax levy bylaw, and 2051 amendment to burning bylaw 2019-74. Questions? All in favor? And that carries. Have a resolution moved by Councillor Withy, seconded by Councillor Thompson. Be it resolved that staff be directed to conduct a review of firearms bylaw number 9540 and report back at the next regular scheduled meeting. Councillor Withy, did you want to speak to this?
Sure. Thanks, Your Worship. This was instigated by the Residents Association in my community that noticed, I don't know where they dug it up, but there is a boundary in our town for that restricts firearms. And they noticed that my neighborhood, as well as the nature preserve attached to it, were outside of the boundary. So their request was, can we please get included in the boundary? And then in an investigation, this was written up in 1995. And I was just thinking that there, with other new subdivisions since then, there may be other areas of town that might be interested in looking at being included in this boundary as well. So I don't know of them. I do know that where I live, the association would like to be have the lines redrawn to include this neighborhood, including the nature preserve. So that's where it all began. Thanks.
Questions? Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I would agree totally with that. And I think beyond Woodland Heights area, there are other areas that have been developed since 1994, which I think this is was a 1994 resolution type of thing. But I did get a copy of 9470, and it does include 7 different areas. But I think we have to expand that. I don't know if it now would include the Devonlea development, the proposed development off of Muskoka Meadows. I'm not even sure if, which areas are included in there, but I think we should have a real good look at all of the areas around, because if you look at Devonlea, I mean, the number of residential units in that area, I mean, it's pretty intense there. So, and I think there are other areas as well. So yeah, I would totally agree with Councillor Withy, and I think we should expand that to take a real good look at different areas around town that have developed since 1994.
Great. Councillor, sorry, who had their hand up next? Deputy Mayor Alcock.
Thank you. I just want to support that for sure. Exactly to Councillor Thompson's point. There's lots of areas, and certainly the area where I live, there's been a lot of residential development. So I would support a comprehensive review for the whole thing. So thank you, Councillor Withy, for putting that on the table.
Okay. You've heard the resolution then. All in favor? And that's carried. Our financial reports. I have a resolution moved by Councillor Withy, seconded by Councillor Fitzgerald. Be it resolved that the draft Town of Huntsville Trust Fund financial statements for the year ending December 31st, 2019, as prepared by Pahapel and Associates, be received and approved by Council. Questions? All in favor? That carries. I have a resolution moved by Councillor Withy, seconded by Councillor Fitzgerald. Be it resolved that the draft Town of Huntsville consolidated financial statements for the year ending December 31st, 2019, as prepared by Pahapel and Associates, be received and approved by Council. Questions? All in favor? Carries. I have a resolution moved by Councillor Weeb, seconded by Councillor Alcock. Be it resolved that council waives the fee in the amount of $254.25, including HST, for the rental of the Active Living Center for the celebration of life ceremony held on March 1st, 2020 for Don Snowden. And you will remember Don Snowden was a longtime employee at the arena in Huntsville. And this was just something that hadn't gotten taken care of since back in early March. Questions? All in favor? And that carries. I have a resolution moved by Councillor Stone, seconded by Councillor Weeb. Be it resolved that the following changes to the BIA Board of Management list of directors for the 2018-2022 term of council be amended as follows. The deletion of Joan Wager and the addition of Kim O'Grady. Any questions? All in favor? And that carries. Okay. Now we are going to do a couple resolutions on some of the COVID stuff we talked about. So I need a mover and a seconder for the waiving of building fees. Can I get Councillor Fitzgerald and Councillor Stone? Be it resolved that in order to assist with the economic recovery for businesses due to the COVID-19 pandemic, Council authorizes the chief building official to waive building permit fees to a maximum of $300, equivalent to a $30,000 structure, and further that temporary structures, as long as all zone provisions are being met, will not require site plan approval, and further that the provision be in place for the remainder of 2020. Questions? All in favor? That carries. If I can get a mover and seconder for the marketing campaign, Councillor Weed, Councillor Schumacher. Be it resolved that the town enter into a memorandum of understanding with the Huntsville Lake Bays Chamber of Commerce for a collective marketing campaign to support businesses in the town of Huntsville as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, and further that $30,000 be allocated to support the campaign be taken from the municipal accommodation tax reserve. Questions? Councillor Stone.
Is that in addition to the 50,000 that we already pay the chamber?
That would be yes. This is specific to COVID-19. Other questions? All in favor? That carries. Now I gotta go way down the table to get the rest of the resolution. Okay, this is a reconsideration of a council resolution, previous council resolution on the horticultural. I need a mover and seconder. Councillor Armour. Yep. And Deputy Mayor Alcock. Okay, be it resolved that council reconsiders resolution number 10320. I need a vote on that. So I need 2/3 to reconsider the motion. All in favor? That carries. So if I can get a mover and seconder, Councillor Stone and Councillor Thompson. Be it resolved that staff be directed to change the service level of horticulture to full service stock, which would entail no maintenance of gardens, flowers, and baskets. So that was the original motion. I can get Councillor Stone and Thompson to move and second again. Be it resolved that council substitutes the motion for the following. Be it resolved that staff be directed to change the service level of horticultural to reduce seasonal operations and service levels, which would entail minimum maintenance of flower beds in the downtown core, watering of beds, weed control, and mulching of existing flower beds and gardens throughout Huntsville. Questions? We need a 2/3 vote to pass the motion to substitute. All in favor? And that carries. So then the main motion is substituted is, be it resolved that staff be directed to change the service level of horticultural to reduce seasonal operations and service levels, which would entail minimum maintenance of flower beds in the downtown core, watering of beds, weed control, and mulching of the existing flower beds and gardens throughout Huntsville. All in favor? And that carries. That's pretty good. Through that. All right, there was some council correspondence that everybody saw in your package. If there's no questions on that. District of Muskoka updates. There was only finance and corporate service plus council on that. And I think the main motions that came out of that, I touched on earlier relating to COVID, that the district committed to loan Muskoka Futures $750,000, and that the district also has set up a COVID-19 task force recovery for all of Muskoka. So that was done at district this month, and that's probably. They also agreed to delegate the authority to the CAO and treasurer to extend waiving penalty fees on water and sewer. So that's another one that could be of interest. Okay. I will quickly go around the table before we go into closed session in case there's anything that we missed. Councillor Armand.
Thank you, Worship. I just wanted to mention that the Newtown docks are installed and they look great. And the floating trail looks amazing. To see lots of people out there using it and enjoying some of this great weather. Well done to the Parks Department and Director Hernan.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Did I see another hand? Councillor Thompson.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. And I would agree with Councillor Armour. The new dockage looks fantastic. I did walk the Hunters Bay Trail before the extended part had been open, but what I did walk on was really, really attractive and really, really well done. I do have a comment with regards to the boat launch at Avery Beach. It has been brought to my attention that maybe we could help the situation there somewhat. The lower parking lot, and there's some confusion also about the upper parking lot where there are designated parking areas. But I wonder if we could maybe put up signage encouraging people that don't have trailers to not park in that lower, that don't have boat trailers to not park in that lower spot, because that's sort of large enough area for vehicles as well as a trailer. And I've been guilty of this too. And so, full disclosure on that. I've parked in that lower parking lot, but it takes away the spot for someone to park their trailer, their trailer type of thing. It's enough of a mayhem down there at any time without confusing the situation and making it more difficult for boaters to park their trailers. So I wonder if we could suggest to people not to park their cars there, utilize the 12 or so spaces that are available in the upper parking lot, and allow that lower part just for boats and trailers. Maybe some signage or something like that would help that, because it has become a bit of a problem on weekends type of thing. So, and unfortunately, because of COVID-19, it put a lot of our thoughts and ideas on the back burner for another year or so. But Director Hernan and Colleen McDonald and I had planned to bring some thoughts and suggestions and ideas for enhancing boat launches and so on and so forth for the town of Huntsville. But unfortunately, that's not going to happen this year, obviously. But hopefully by next year, we'll be able to have that and alleviate some of that problem. But in the meanwhile, it would be really helpful if automobiles didn't park in that lower parking lot and found elsewhere to park down there. Thank you.
Councillor Withey?
Thank you, Worship. I just wanted to make note of a couple things. I don't know how public this is, but many will have noticed our flag on Town Hall was moved to half-mast in recognition of the passing of former Mayor Bob Addison, who was a really important member of our community, really great guy. And on another sort of completely different note, I don't know if it was, it's actually been acknowledged, the contribution by many in our community to help out during this pandemic. But in particular, I wanted to acknowledge Ginger and Martin Barkey for all the, and MBRP for all their donations of plexiglass shields around the community for no charge. I think that's important to point out. Thank you.
Well said. So many community members have stepped up, and we should, every time we get together, acknowledge what they've done. So thank you for that, Councillor Withey. We did acknowledge former Mayor Bob Addison at the beginning of the meeting too. So, Councillor Schumacher.
I guess just a comment really that May would usually be Community Living Month, and I know we missed our usual flag raising that we enjoy with council. I think it had been scheduled for May 11th, so obviously we weren't able to do that, but I do want to just again take note of all the staff currently working in community living in the congregated settings. I hate that term, but that's the provincial term for it, and I mean anyone in long-term care and in congregated settings, and kudos to the staff going in every single day.
Thanks for that. Deputy Mayor Alcock?
I can be very, thank you, Your Worship, very quick. This one's really directed to our own staff. I just wanted to say how appreciative I am that we get our weekly updates from the directors on what's going on at Town Hall. I personally find that really helpful. You know, occasionally when you're isolated like we've all been doing, you kind of feel a little bit out of it and wondering what's going on. And so it's really, really terrific getting that update. And I would also say that to you, Your Worship. You've been giving us all our weekly updates, and much appreciated, and lots of information in there. So thank you.
Thank you. And you're absolutely right. And a huge thank you to staff, because staff have been working from all over parts of our great town remotely, and they are at the end of their phones and the end of their computers and have been doing a great job. And I know it hasn't been easy, because I haven't found it particularly easy either. So thank you everyone for everything that you are doing. Is that it? Oh, Councillor Thompson?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just one more comment here. We were just notified, those of us on District Council have just been notified that another victim of COVID-19 is Porter Airlines, which was had instituted a service between Muskoka Airport and Billy Bishop Airport in Toronto, has decided to cancel for obvious reasons. So that service that I think a lot of us were looking forward to and appreciating is not going to be available for the foreseeable future. Thank you.
Councillor Weed.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to echo some of the comments too. I want to thank our staff for all the work they've been doing, especially out in the area out Muskoka Road 3 with Earls Road and the construction. There's a lot going on there. I've been hearing various issues come up and concerns, and our staff have been reacting and responding to them very well. Our staff and district staff and even the OPP. So I want to kind of reach out to spread that umbrella a little broader and thank everyone involved with just keeping everything kind of rolling and on its feet. So it hasn't gone unnoticed, and the residents are passing their thanks often through me to staff, and I wanted to take this opportunity to pass it along to everybody listening. So thank you.
Thanks for that. Okay, council, I need a mover and seconder and a 2/3 vote to suspend the rules going into closed session to add something to the agenda. So if I could get Councillor Stone to move, Councillor Armour. Okay, I have a resolution. Be it resolved that the rules of procedure relating to approval for additions to the agenda be suspended to allow for the following matter, and that the suspension be reinstated at the conclusion of the said matter. Closed session municipal act section 239, proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of property, verbal discussion, property within the urban core. All in favor? And that's 2/3. That's carried. Thank you. Now I have a resolution moved by Councillor Alcock and seconded by Councillor Armour. Be it resolved that the next portion of the meeting be closed to the public commencing now at 11:47 a.m. for the purpose of considering the following matters. Section 239, proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of property and advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, and proposed or pending acquisition of or disposition of property, verbal discussion property within the urban core. All in favor? And that carries. And so now, council, I believe we all have to zoom out and then zoom back into our closed session link. See you in a couple minutes. Okay, we're just about back. A couple people find it difficult to reconnect here.
I can hear you.
Jason, you can hear?
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Tim, can you hear us?
If her name's there, he's just,
Yeah, he's just still trying to connect to audio.
he did say he was having difficulties.
Okay, well, we've got quorum, so I will read the resolution. Moved by Councillor Alcock, seconded by Councillor Weed. Be it resolved that confirmation bylaw 2020-52 be received, numbered, and read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed this 27th day of May 2020. All in favor? All in favor? Hands. That's carried. And I have a resolution moved by Councillor Alcock and seconded by Councillor Armour. Be it resolved that we do now adjourn at 12:40 p.m. All in favor? And that's carried. And thank you, Council.
Bye, everyone. Nice seeing you.
Have a nice day.
Cheers.
Take care, everyone.
Enjoy the